The webinar will begin shortly. Please remain on the line. The webinar will begin shortly. Please remain on the line. The webinar will begin shortly. Please remain on the line. The webinar will begin shortly. Please remain on the line. The webinar will begin shortly. Please remain on the line. The webinar will begin shortly. Please remain on the line. The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Welcome. Before I go to our introduction slide, I just want to mention that while we have some notes here for mainly the staff and applicant teams, you may, if you would not like to speak tonight, always watch this broadcast on YouTube Live at the link at the very bottom here. Okay, that being said, good evening and welcome. I am Amy Johnson, Senior Planner with the City of Westminster Community Development Department. I will have an agenda for you in a moment. Then I will go over the city processes applicable to this Valley View Estates single-family attached project. And then the applicant will have a presentation for you. And after that, we will have a question and comment period. But before I begin, we have a few housekeeping items for the public tonight. Please keep your comments courteous. The most productive conversation starts with respect. Questions and comments will be read aloud to the audience along with your name. Please keep your questions and comments relevant to the application being considered. If you have questions or comments that do not pertain to this application, please email planning@cityofwestminster.us and you will be put in contact with the appropriate staff members. For additional information regarding the city's social media commenting policy, you may visit the city's webpage at cityofwestminster.us/news/social media commenting policy. Also note, this meeting is being recorded and will be posted on the city's YouTube channel after this live broadcast at the link below there. It's the same one as the live, only instead of live at the end, it says videos, and you can just look for the one from today's date. So the staff presentation will be approximately 6 to 8 minutes. The applicant presentation will be approximately 12 to 15 minutes. The question and answer or comment period will be after that. And then at the very end, we have next steps and my contact information for you. Also, so you know, you may enter any questions or comments you may have into the chat box at any time during either of these presentations. If you have a question, please remember to stay on topic, as I mentioned before, and that these whole proceedings are recorded. These questions or comments will be read after the applicant presentation. You may also say there that you would like to speak aloud, and you will be called upon if the time allows, which I expect we will have time this evening, probably. And the entire presentation, again, is recorded and uploaded to YouTube, so you can go back and watch it later. And you can also contact me with questions or comments if they arise at a later time. All right, so the staff presentation now. The proposed development is located at the vacant 1.67 acres near the northeast corner of 104th Avenue and Federal Boulevard, approximately here where this arrow is pointing. The applicant is proposing 12 attached or duplex dwelling units in 6 buildings total with concurrent preliminary and official development plan amendment applications. And we refer to those in abbreviation as PDP and ODP. The minimum lot size they are proposing is 4,927 square feet. And the private open space they are proposing, which you will see more about in a moment, is 9,758 square feet. And due to the small overall size of this property and the proportionately large amount of public land dedication that would be required, we are accepting cash in lieu of the public land dedication. That is not inclusive of the private open space mentioned a moment ago. Here we have the process outlined for you in a flow chart. As I mentioned, the preliminary and official development plan applications are going concurrently. So at this time, staff has already reviewed both of those once. We have given comments back to the applicant, and we have asked that they at least address the major comments that would affect the site plan and the building elevations prior to sending out the invitations for the neighborhood meeting, which is of course happening now. After this, we will do our best to make sure any input we receive from the public is incorporated. And then staff will continue to review the submittals that the applicant provides to us. Finally, we will be looking to both Planning Commission for review and consideration, as well as City Council at public hearings. And of course, City Council will have the final decision on these applications. After that, assuming approval, they will proceed to civil construction drawings and building permits. They will submit those to the city as well. The staff will review them, and those particular items will be administratively approved, assuming again that they have been the project has been approved, the PDP and ODP, by the City Council. So with PDP and ODP reviews, we look at land use. That in particular is usually reviewed with the PDP, the Preliminary Development Plan. And then with the Official Development Plan amendment, we look at public land dedication, at least in more depth, traffic considerations, drainage and detention for stormwater, private open space, exterior architectural design, and consistency with single-family attached design standards. That covers the process from the staff's point of view, and now the applicant has a presentation for you.
Hi, I'm Matt Collins. I'm one of the co-owners of the land and the lead on the development project. First, I want to, do you have the slides, Amy, or should I pull up my PowerPoint?
I have them and I'm ready to advance as needed.
Okay, perfect. I just want to start with saying thanks everybody for showing up. Certainly part of our intent with the entire construction project is to make sure that we're, creating good neighbors for the entire community. Amy, if you can go to the next slide.
Yes.
Just a very quick project overview. Some of this Amy already touched on, but it's the plot of land that goes from Elliott to Decatur, or from 104th to Decatur along Elliott. It's going to be 6 buildings, which will be 12 single-family attached homes. Every single-family attached, so each unit will have a 2-car garage and ample parking on the driveway. We're going to be creating additional street lighting along Elliott, to try to make it easier for traffic flow along that road. The private park that Amy referenced, there'll be a 9,500 square foot private park right in the corner of 104th and Elliott. And then the fencing that already exists in the neighborhood that's along 104th, we're going to extend that. I have it referenced here that it goes all the way to the corner of Elliott, but obviously it's not going to go quite to the corner. So we make sure there's good sight lines for cars coming around, but we are going to extend it so it'll look just like the existing fence. And then there's also going to be a professionally landscaped area on the corner of Elliott and Decatur at the bottom of the hill. Again, being mindful of sight lines for coming around that corner. Can we go to the next slide? This one quickly, again, here's the location. I think Amy already did a good job of pointing out exactly where it is. And I would assume that most folks in attendance know where it is. And this picture was included in the packet that we mailed to everybody. We go to the next one. This is the actual site plan of the site itself. Again, this was in the mailing that we sent to everybody, but just a nice diagram of where everything's going to be located. You have the private park notated at the top of the hill, and then that landscaped area at the bottom, and the 6 buildings that'll comprise the 12 units. We go to the next slide. This is going to be the front of the homes. We're going to do 2 different elevations, so it's not like everything looks exactly the same. And these are going to be the 2 different elevations. Can we go to the next slide? On the next one, it shows the sides and the rears, so I think it's just a little more descriptive. I think the important thing to note with this is that the top left corner, which is the front, that's going to be what you're looking at from the grade. So that's where like the curb will enter them from Elliott. So when you're looking at the structures, they look really tall, especially when you're looking at the rear one. But that's because we're going to do walkout basements that'll go sort of down the hill from the curb itself that enters on Elliott. Where the green is on the side ones, and then also where the front house begins is where the above grade would actually begin. Can we go to the next one? This is the same thing, just model 2. You can see they're all going to be pretty similar. There's just some differences in aesthetic design and coloration. So again, it doesn't have total monotony, and it'll look nice as you're going down Elliott. Next one, please. Just an overview of some of the landscaping, because obviously it's not just homes that are going to be put in. I think it's important to note that out of the total 1.6 acres, a full 60% of it is actually going to be landscaping. I apologize for the typo. That shouldn't say landscape. That's a total of the landscaping as opposed to just structures. All the buildings are going to be set back 30 feet. They'll have nice manicured front yards. And again, they all have the 2-car garage, and then that 30-foot sets a nice, good long driveway that each person should have parking, in their driveway. We'll have the couple of new street lights that are going to be along Elliott. I think important that all of them will be before that bend to Decatur. So it should be really just for sort of traffic flow. I don't know that it'll be in too much of the existing neighborhood. The large park area at 104th and Elliott, we're putting in a new Valley View Estates entry sign. This was a decision we made. Like I said at the beginning, our intention is it's really important to us to make sure we're being good neighbors. So we didn't want to put a sign that said, welcome to our new 6 buildings. We wanted it to notate that it's welcoming to the entire neighborhood. So we're going to use that same name. It's going to be, Valley View Estates, where that monument sign will be welcoming them to Valley View Estates, not something different. At the bottom of the hill, and I think we have a picture of that coming up, but there'll be a nice large landscaped area at Elliott and Decatur. In the entire area, on the whole 1.6 acres, there's going to be over 100 trees, over 300 shrubs and bushes. We went out of our way to make sure that all of those things were selected to minimize water usage, trying to be conscious that, water is becoming an issue in Colorado, and we want it to be minimal. All the new landscaped areas are going to be taken care of and paid for by the new HOA. There'll be no impact on cost whatsoever to other portions of the existing neighborhood. All that'll be part of the new HOA for the 6 buildings. And then also we're going to have a pedestrian and bike path that'll go along Elliott right in front of the houses that'll connect around the bend into Decatur. Next slide, please. Just some examples of some of the landscaping that we're going to put in. I think also part of the reason why this slide's important is just to show, same thing with the different designs going down the hill. There's going to be a lot of different types of trees. We don't want this to be something where it looks monotonous and everything's sort of the same tree. There's a really good design we have in place for lots of different types of trees and to have them nicely placed throughout the whole 1.6 acres. Next slide, please. Next slide's basically the same thing, just the shrubs we intend to put in. And again, I'll point out, and I'm sure a lot of people recognize a lot of these plants. They're pretty common around the area because they are low water usage. Next slide, please. So here's the close-up of the private park that's going to be at the top of the hill. And again, extending that fence across this plot of land, which will add some privacy, hopefully reduce some sound from 104th. It's all going to be designed with native plants, the ones we just showed you on the previous. It's Colorado, so I'm sure there'll be people in these new buildings that have dogs that walk them around that park. So we are going to have dog sanitation stations in there so they can clean up after their dogs. Next one, please. Here's the landscaped area at the bottom of the hill. The little arrow that says detention facility notates what we have here is the stormwater infrastructure. And then around that'll be lots of landscaping. The larger items of landscaping sort of further in to make sure that we're maintaining good sight lines around that corner for the moving traffic. Next slide, please. That might be it, actually. Yeah, cool.
Thank you, Matt. All right, so now we are at the question and answer period. And for those of you who may have joined a little later, you may enter questions and comments into the chat box. And it's actually got, I think, called the question box, as shown on the screen there. The entire presentation will be recorded as a reminder, and for those of you who may have joined later, and uploaded to YouTube so you can go back and watch it later. And if other questions or comments arise after this time, you can also contact me. Please remember to stay on topic, as I mentioned before. And you can also say that in this question box that you would like to speak, and a staff member will let you know if and when you can speak. Next steps, as we had already mentioned, are shown here. And I did want to let you know my contact information. My email, excuse me, is ajohnson@cityofwestminster.us, and my phone number is 303-658-2098. And even if your question isn't precisely for me, I can help get it to the correct people, and it also helps me to coordinate as needed, just to know what questions are being asked so that I stay in the loop. You can also stay tuned for further information at our project status webpage, the link shown there. And I will go ahead and leave that slide up now. And John McConnell was going to assist me with reading questions, but I see only one right now, and I have already been able to read it. The Meadowlark, I believe, I'm sorry, please correct me if I'm wrong. I believe that is the one that's immediately east of this proposed site here. In either case, the number of people who were invited to this meeting, and Matt Collins can verify this as well, was every property owner within, excuse me, 500 feet of the property boundary, the subject property boundary. And so that may not have included every resident in that Meadowlark HOA. So after that, now I see we're getting quite a few more, so I'll ask John McConnell to please assist me.
Yes, thank you, Amy. So the next question is about the same topic. Only a few in the area received a letter about the meeting. Why wasn't the entire area notified? This shift will heavily impact everyone from the apartments, the Nines complex, and the rest of the neighborhood. And to Amy's last comment, our city code requires a 500-foot notification, and the applicant has fulfilled that. So that's 500 feet from all boundaries of this property. Everyone within that 500 feet was sent a letter according to the property ownership records and the tax records. Next question.
Sorry, John, went real quick. I'll just mention that before these go for the Planning Commission and City Council hearings, there will be signs posted as well. So for those residents who are not property owners, they can see those signs as well. And you're welcome to spread the word as well.
Yes, and also Amy had also shown you an illustration that outlined the project and where we are in the stage of this project. And it's important to note that the city requires this neighborhood meeting or neighborhood notification right after the first round of staff reviews. And so you're very early in the process. Typically a project would go through at least 2 and many times 3 reviews. Less frequently, more reviews, but we always count on a couple of reviews before we get to the public hearing process. So really we're in the early stages, and this effort in meeting with the residents is really designed to provide to get your input at the early stage, so that the applicant can have a chance to take in your considerations and potentially modify their plans if they see some real interest in some change there. So, well, moving on to the next question. There are quite a few accidents, fast traffic, that occur down the Elliott Hill. What plans have been assessed for this? It's probably a good question for Heath, I think.
Yes, Heath, and we may have someone from the applicant's traffic team as well. Heath, we'll start with you.
Thank you, Heath Klein, City Transportation Engineer. So to date, I have not had a request for a speed study to determine what the speeds are on there. I don't deny that there may be some speeding along Elliott. So the city will put this on our list for studying. And what we do is, based upon the level of speeding, traffic engineers often discuss the 85th percentile, which is what is the speed that 85% of the traffic does not exceed. And so if we find that 85th percentile is quite higher than the posted speed limit, then we start looking at traffic mitigation. Most often, we are starting to deploy what we call speed awareness signs, which are the signs that show the speed limit, but then also flash how fast the vehicles are actually traveling. And so I will get this up on our list, and we'll do the study and see what is the next step. Thank you.
Thank you, Heath. And is this something that the applicant would have been studying, or is this mainly a city issue?
It is a city issue. Typically, the applicant doesn't look at that on a case where it's an infill, such as what we have today. But if we do the study, we may find that as part of the construction, we may try to add the speed awareness sign with the construction of this site.
Okay, thank you.
All right, next question and comment. I'm concerned, and this is from Amanda Messick, I'm concerned that we're trying to build on every inch of Westminster land. When I moved to Westminster, I moved here because it was a suburb and we loved all the open space and parks. Why are we trying to build on every part of Westminster? So I'm going to take a shot at answering that question for you, Amanda, and it is a very good question. In Westminster, like other cities, we have a citywide comprehensive plan. And as a part of that comprehensive plan, the city assigns a land use designation to all of the properties vacant and developed. And in this case, the land use designation is residential 8 or R8. And this land use designation was intended to develop in the way that you see this proposal presented to you tonight. And so it's the job of the staff, and as a part of our process in reviewing these development proposals, to ensure that whatever's being proposed here is in line with and complies with our citywide comprehensive plan. Coincidentally, we're doing our periodic update of the comprehensive plan right now. And so a lot of that information is on our website. If you want to get more information about the comprehensive plan and the latest update, Amy can probably provide you with some information on that, or we could put that, type this up in the chat box for you. And there's still time to get involved and provide input. And also, it is pending city council approval. So you'll see some public hearings regarding the comprehensive plan coming up very soon with the Planning Commission and City Council.
Thank you, John. Right. Answered. I don't have anything to add. I should mention, though, that John McConnell is our principal planner within the planning division, my boss. So just as an introduction for him. And I don't have the link or any information immediately at my fingertips about the comprehensive plan process. So if you would like more information about that, please send me an email whenever you would like.
All right, and the next question is, has a traffic study been performed? And if so, may we see that study?
So I do believe that the traffic study, yes, we have asked for a traffic. Actually, Heath, I need to clarify with you. Was it a study or a letter?
It is a letter that just looks at the trip generation. This is largely due to the fact that on 104th and Elliott, there's already an existing traffic signal, and the existing roadway width of Elliott has already been constructed. So there isn't the public improvements that typically are brought in with other further analysis of traffic. So this is just merely a traffic trip generation. And with that, we are anticipating about 112 daily trips for this project. And with that, there's about 12 in the peak hour. So if you think of that in 1 hour, there's really going to only be about one vehicle, per 10 minutes or so. And what we have analyzed, the city of Westminster does not operate the traffic signal at 100th or 104th and Elliott. That is actually the city of Federal Heights that operates that signal. But we will work with them if it looks like we need to add any additional timing for the green to get onto 104th. Thank you.
Thank you, Heath. And please let me know if there's anything the applicant team may be able to add at any time. As far as whether you can see the study, yes, that is a matter of public record, although it has not at this time been completely approved. So you again may email me at any time and we can provide you with a copy, and we'll just let you know that it's still being reviewed.
All right, if the applicant has nothing else to add to that question, we'll move on to the next one. And it's regarding safety. There's a hairpin turn. In the past, it was decided by the city that there would be changes to this curb area that would significantly decrease the hairpin. Cars continually go through the fence or barricades across the property. And that was from Kathy Okoa. And I apologize, Kathy, if I mispronounce your last name. Would the staff like to comment on that or provide any more information?
Heath, are you aware of any of those considerations?
I do know that it is a pretty hard turn at that corner. So this development is not going to modify that. I will work with our streets department to see what's happening, if there's any plans for modifying that. I'd like to add guardrail to keep people from going into a fence. But at this time, I am not aware of that.
Thank you, Heath.
Okay, the next question is, how can 6 homes be built on 5 lots?
I will go back to, first of all, the site plan, just to point out just some details that may have not been obvious before. Here we go. So just to clarify, in case it wasn't clear before, these are attached homes, also known as duplexes. So this one building right here is 2 units. And so that's how we have the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 buildings with 12 units. I don't know if that's helpful. I can also say that we do have, as John had mentioned before with the comprehensive plan, we do have this property designated as at a density that R8 that would allow this number of units on this amount of land.
Amy, I would just add that as, based on the illustration that you're seeing here, is probably obvious that to you at this point, there's actually 12 lots. There's 6 buildings, but there's 12 lots. And so each unit will have its own lot in addition to the common areas, which would be the private park space as shown on the site plan, and the detention facility. Those two would be common areas between the ownership.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, the next question is, the Knights of Columbus, when having events, has parking all the way down the street. What happens when this occurs? Is there public parking on Elliott, as this road can be very narrow? What then happens?
Heath, can you please come on and talk to us about parking? I know that's something you were looking at already.
Yes, so we will allow parking on the west side of Elliott, but due to the frequency of the driveways on the east side, there will be limited or no parking will be on the east side, particularly at the corners of 104th and down at Decatur. There will not be any parking in what we call site triangles, but the street does allow for parking on the west side of Elliott.
Yes, thank you, Heath. And just to clarify, in the image that you are seeing on your screen, north is to the left. So of course, east is over here, and you may have already known this, but just in case it's confusing, when Heath mentioned the west side, he did mean this side of Elliott.
All right, the next question is another one from Kathy. Traffic is very fast and may go through the stop sign, which is a safety issue on 105th and Decatur. Having more cars, two per family, adds another 24 cars in the neighborhood. This will be a major safety concern near Valley View Park. Would staff or applicant like to comment on the comment?
Heath, first of all, can you clarify whether the applicant is looking that far away? I assume this is, when she says Decatur and 105th, that is a little ways away from this site.
Actually, I think it should be right around the corner. So around that hairpin curve, you've got the intersection of 105th and Decatur. Is that where we're talking about?
I believe so. And it's a stop for northbound 105th to enter onto Decatur. So this project should not add to that problem of running a stop sign there. And we will just continue to watch. I will ask PD to observe this and enforce anybody running stop signs at that. Typically what we look at for ways that this development is going to impact the neighborhood, we start looking at really where are the residents, the future residents really going to go. And most of this traffic should be heading toward the 104th for both jobs and for dinners, going to the grocery store. So yes, there's a chance that there's going to be additional traffic on Decatur, but primarily the residents from this will be traveling southbound to get to 104th Avenue.
Thank you, Heath.
All right, thanks, Heath. The next question is, where is the detention facility emptying? We have drainage and flooding issues already. Building will potentially increase those issues. And that's from Jenna and Stephen Kretzel.
Thank you. So now we have another staff member who can address that, Nathan Enck, senior engineer, and he's looking at drainage.
Hi, yes. My name is Nathan Enck. I'm a senior engineer here at the City of Westminster. Drainage is always a concern with all of these developments and the infill developments that we have throughout Westminster. And our team looks at that alongside of the applicant's engineer to come up with the best possible solution, to provide water quality and detention on site. To treat that runoff. So what this applicant is proposing is a swale to dump into a detention pond and then pinch back those release rates significantly more than than typical. So the flows that are exiting this property will actually be reduced due to the standards and the stormwater drainage manual standards that we uphold throughout the city.
And Nathan, just for clarification, when you say reduced, I think you're saying reduced as relative to the current conditions?
Correct. Yes. Every new development does require a minimum of a 90% reduction of historic flows. And so this is a site that we're working with the applicant on to ensure that we're not creating additional problems downstream, and also getting that water quality that we so desperately need here in Colorado. And I can also invite the applicant's engineer to come on and speak further to the design.
Yes, Matt, who would you like to speak to that, or do you have someone with us?
Yeah, Cameron is the civil engineer. He can probably speak to it best if he wants to further clarify what Nathan was saying with the detention pond returning things to the water table and reducing what the current runoff is. I think Cameron would probably be best prepared to speak to that.
Great, and I don't believe Cameron has camera availability tonight, but he is available by voice, I believe.
Okay, yes, this is Cameron. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
All right, yeah, I would like to go ahead and speak about drainage. Again, my name is Cameron Knapp. I'm with Drexel Burrell Engineers. We are the engineering firm doing the construction drawings and the surveyor for the project as well. So just in general, for kind of the concept of drainage, currently the site drains from south to north and into Decatur Street. And the historic runoff generated by the site is approximately 4.4 cubic feet per second. So as Nathan alluded to, we are required to do on-site detention to relief at that historic rate, actually at 90% of that historic rate, so 3.96 cubic feet per second. And we're going to accomplish that by on-site detention at that north end of the site. It's actually not just a detention pond, but it will be used for water quality purposes as a bioretention pond. And so as Nathan mentioned, drainage from the site is from the home units will drain to the back side of the units towards the east side of the property boundary, where we'll have a grass line swale, which is also a best management practice to help filter sediment from runoff. And that swale will lead to the north end of the site into that bioretention pond. And the difference between, a bioretention pond compared to just a grass line detention pond that you see at most developments is this will have an 18-inch flat, 18-inch thick course of porous material on its bottom. The bottom of the pond will be flat, and it will generally act as kind of like a sponge. It'll be a sand medium that water will easily filter through. So, and then at the bottom of that filter base will be under drains to convey water. But the concept is that stormwater will be allowed to recharge back into the groundwater table, and in larger storms, the pond will fill up. It will have an outlet structure that will regulate the 100-year runoff to 90% of historic rates, and it will release at that location at our historic low point of the site at Decatur. We'll have a sidewalk culvert that will pass water out into the curb and gutter of Decatur and continue on to the east. So that's kind of it in a nutshell, but I'd be glad to answer any more specific type of questions that you may have.
Thank you, Cameron.
Can I just add one quick thing too? I think it's important for clarity. The swale that Cameron was talking about that's in the backyard is the center point of it. So the lowest depth of it is going to be pretty well removed from the back fence line. So it's really specifically designed to channel water into it, have water slowly return, sort of underneath it and go down into that retention pond. It's really specifically designed to make sure that, it's not going to be like dumping it across the fence line into the folks behind. It's designed to contain it in the backyards we're building.
Okay, thanks.
All right, thanks everybody. The next question is from Jana and Stephen again. What is the plan to fence the east, the backyards of the new buildings?
I know that when we reviewed the first submittal, we had asked for more information about the fencing. We had asked if it would be open rail because we just want to make sure that that's working with the drainage and so forth. So we don't know what the approved state will be at this time. So I will just ask Matt Collins to please let us know what they're looking at right now.
Yeah, absolutely. So the split rail fencing that Amy's referencing would really be like the side yards of the backyards that we're building. So it'll be what separates these new people's backyards. The fence that's going to be along the east. Our plan is to keep that existing fence line in place. It looks like a pretty nice privacy fence. And as Amy and the city staff referenced, we've got a few more steps in the process before we actually show up and start building things. So our intention was at some point in the process, certainly before we start, digging anything into the ground, some of the folks that have fences that are in a little bit of a disrepair, we'll probably end up knocking on your door and having a conversation about if you'd let us, build you a new fence. So it ends up being nice and new and matches the rest of the neighborhood. But it was important to us. It was something we communicated with the city staff. Everybody's on board with making sure that those rear fences that you currently have remain nice, tall privacy fences.
All right.
Thanks,
you. Matt. So the next question, and Matt, this one may be another one that you may want to answer as well, is from Kathy. And Kathy says, I love the, whoops, I lost it. Hold on.
I see this one. I'll go ahead. I love the privacy. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, okay. Great. I think I have it now. Bear with me. Amy, why don't you go ahead and do it? I'm having a hard time finding it now. My window.
I have it. Thanks.
Jumped around.
I love the privacy that we have, which is one reason we purchased the property. We have been here 29 years, and although I realize changes will happen, or changes happen, having structures powering over at an elevation which is much higher than where our yard is will look so overwhelming. And I feel those in new homes will be seeing everything that happens on my property. What windows are on the backside, bedrooms, living rooms, kitchen? So I will go to those elevations, and then Matt, I'll let you speak to that.
Okay.
Are you there, Matt?
Yep. What I'll say to this is, I think right off the bat, and sort of the important thing is, I don't know. But I can tell you that, and again, we have lots of steps of the process to go. Something we've been in communication with our architects about a lot. And we literally had the team meet us there on site so we could walk around and talk about it, is as we're figuring out the exact positioning of the buildings and the angles that they sit on. I can't stand it when you have like the new buildings in downtown Denver where it's like this building's window faces this building's window and you can like wave at your neighbor. I actually was on House Hunters a couple of years ago, and literally on my episode, we made like a spoof about how ridiculous it is. So it's certainly something that is within our purview. It's our intent to, manipulate the buildings as much as we can to make sure that that doesn't happen. And if you I know my contact information was on this somewhere. I'll defer to Amy as to whether it's appropriate or allowed for me to share my contact information or ask for yours or whatever. But for those of you that exist, that back up to the property, I have an open door policy. I'm more than happy to meet you over there, and we can look at the lines together and sort of figure out how we best angle the building that's best for everybody. Our intention is certainly not to usurp anybody's views or build a building where you're going to have somebody like staring into your bathroom. We definitely want to make sure that doesn't happen, and we're open-minded to conversations as to how.
All right, great. Thanks, Matt.
And I just wanted to mention really quickly that this is really good feedback that we're getting from you now. And as we approach the time when we assume we will be getting toward public hearings, if this is something we need to look at as far as a section that shows the other houses over here, that kind of thing, to give you a better idea of scale and so forth, that's definitely something we can look at as well.
Great, thanks, Amy. Next is from Jen and Stephen. Not only should you consider the speed on Elliott, but around the corner on Decatur as well. Every car travels on both streets. Thanks for that comment. Next is from Kathy. What is going to happen if these structures come in? Most duplexes in time tend to be rentals, and the area looks horrible. What is the property value of these homes to purchase, and what will that do to our property values? That's probably a good Matt question.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm happy to speak to that. It's a tricky question. I'll tell you that personally, I'm a deep believer in affordable housing. We certainly see what's going on everywhere in America, and the need for additional affordable housing. I don't know if low-end affordable housing is necessarily what fits this neighborhood, and it certainly doesn't fit with what our vision is or what we intend to be as a company or build here. So all of the buildings that we're building are going to be, not the buildings, each single family unit, so each side of the duplex is going to be 2,400 square feet roughly above grade. And then it's going to, from the curb level, it's going to go down. So it'll have a walkout basement as well. And our intention is to build them pretty high end. As far as an exact price, I don't know yet. We're still in the future for when we'd be selling them. But I will say at least significantly more, significantly is a strong, more than a buyer would potentially pay for a building in an adjacent older neighborhood for the same square footage. We intend to build them pretty nice. Our intention at this point is not to build them and then we rent them out. It's to build them and then attract buyers. Of course, it's not our legal right to discriminate against folks that would live there or rent out. But yeah, our intention is to build them pretty nice. And our intention is to have it be something that raises the value of the neighborhood and adds to the value of the neighborhood. These are definitely not going to be low-end structures. Definitely not.
All right, thanks, Matt. So the next question is regarding wildlife. The question is from Deborah Gordon. What is going to be done about the wildlife that lives in that section of land? There are foxes, raccoons, skunks, rabbits that live there or hunt in that section of land. Also, what will be done to prevent rodents from entering our properties while you're building? That'd be another good one for Matt.
Yeah, do you have some practices you might like to share with us?
I don't know that I necessarily do. We might need to look at, rabbits that might live there. I wasn't necessarily aware of any coyotes or foxes that live on that plot of land. But it's certainly something that we're willing and open to looking at. And then, as far as while the construction is going on, we've got a pretty good, healthy budget, along with very conscientious builders that we're going with Matt Davis, who's in the room with Hudson Construction, we've absolutely got game plans to make sure that we're protective of the neighborhood and the street as we're going on. So it's beyond road, to make sure there's not crazy amounts of dust and as construction's going on. So we've got a pretty good game plan in mind to be protective of it. As far as rodents that come out of it, I'm not exactly sure how frequent of an issue that is or what would be done to handle it. But I'm sure that our builders have some sort of game plan, as we do for other things like dust.
All right, thanks again, Matt. So the next is a comment. It would be helpful for speed information to be included. And thank you. And that was from Kurt Williams. The next question is from JP. What will the total occupancy increase be? So I think that's a question of how many residents do we project being on the property in total? Maybe a per household estimate would be appropriate here.
Yes, Matt, do you have an estimate for how many you would expect?
We definitely do. Off the top of my head, I can't recall it. Amy, do you recall what the city does for 3-bedroom houses? I think it's like 3.5 or 4 people, or 2.5 or 4 people or something.
We make some calculations for the PLD. We could
exactly
share those if those are handy, but yeah, that's the only estimates we have.
Right. I think maybe John Van might have that.
And I do think, and I'll just say, I think bedrooms is probably a better relativism than what an estimates on people would be. And they are going to be 3-bedroom. They're going to be pretty big, right? But they're going to be 3-bedroom units. It's not like we're building tons of bedrooms.
Yes, thank you. John Van, what is your number that you use?
Yeah, sure, Amy. So by city code and in calculations for our public land dedication, we assign a population per unit for single family attached at 2.5. So our calculations, and again, these are subjective to who's living in what house, obviously, at what stage in their life. We're showing and calculating residential population of 30.
Thank you.
All right, thanks, John. Thanks, Matt. So the next one is from Kurt Williams. In the letter we received, the rear view of the development was not included. So tonight's the first time we've seen this. The elevation differences raises drainage concerns, giving the slope. How is that being addressed? So I think we're talking about the drainage swell that runs across the rear of the properties.
Yes, Cameron perhaps can come back on and speak to that.
Yeah, sure, Amy, thank you. As far as the slope and the grades, again, they're walkout lots. So yeah, we have about 10 feet of slope from the unit's driveway as it goes back towards the east to get to that walkout area. But then, like you mentioned, a drainage swale offset of the property line by about 7 to 10 feet. The drainage that slopes down towards the east is caught in that swale and then conveyed in a northerly direction to the bioretention pond. So it is sized for the 100-year event with a foot of freeboard as well to meet the requirements. But yeah, that basically means any runoff that we're going to generate on our site will more than adequately be captured in that swale and routed to the north and not spill over onto the neighboring property.
Hey, Cameron, just for clarity, do we know from like the height of the lawn or whatever, what's the peak depth of that swale? How far does it?
It's only about I want to say about 2 feet deep from the fence side, but then it does slope up quite a bit to the rear patios of the units. That ranges anywhere from about a 5% slope to almost a 20% slope.
And that center point of the swale. So for those of you that don't know what a swale is, it'll look prettier than a ditch, but it's basically like a ditch in the backyard, where it has that low midpoint to gather water, return it underneath, and then on some extent have it flow down to the detention pond. And that center point of the swale, you're saying is going to be roughly, so it'll be different for each lot, but 7 to 10 feet at least from the back fence, from the existing fence line of the neighbors. Is that correct?
Right. Yep. That's right, Matt. Yes.
Okay. And I think that probably gives the clearest picture of what we're doing to address it, because of course there's, like Cameron's saying, from the back patio, there'll be a downward slope, but then where it's like crescendo will be about 2 feet above all the dirt that's along that fence. So it'll go down towards the swale and then come back up before it hits what your existing fence lines are. And that would be how the backyards are going to handle the drainage. Is that about right, Cameron?
Yep, exactly right.
Thank you, guys. And with all the interest on this, I think we'll definitely be looking for a cross section showing all the way through here, all of that grade, and representing approximately the height of the adjacent houses, just so we can see that whole relationship in the next submittal.
Okay, no problem.
All right. Thanks, everybody. So the next question is from JP, and JP asks, will this be affordable for seniors or will it be market rate?
Matt Collins?
Great question. At this point in time, we haven't really thought it through, but at this point in time, we don't have the intention to market as a senior HOA. At this point in time, we're planning on it being just to the open market. And
I'm not sure if this person is aware, I presented another senior housing project recently to council. And while that was definitely for seniors, it was also not affordable, which we would normally define as, usually having some kind of housing assistance. So yeah, I guess no intentions for that right now.
All right, thanks everybody. The next question is from Meredith Brower. The question is, where will snow removal from the development be put? The city already just leaves the snow from that section of the road at the opening to the park. Does anybody here from the city can speak to snow removal?
Keith or Nathan?
Go for it, Nathan.
I could take a shot at this. With this development, the residents are obviously going to be taking care of their own driveways as well as the sidewalk along their frontage. That's city code. In that effort, they're also not allowed to be putting that snow into the street, so they need to be storing that in their own driveways or in their lawns. As the winter comes, we'll have city trucks going down and plowing the city streets on our designated schedule. And yes, I understand that we do have to push that snow down there, but in those winter months when we have a lot of snow and sometimes, especially the last couple of winters, we haven't had a whole lot of melt off, we need somewhere to store that. And oftentimes we do use the public parks or, those less used areas to store those snow. So the residents will be taking care of their own driveways, but the snow storage for the streets will likely stay the same.
Okay. Thanks, Nathan. The next question is from Jana and Stephen Kretzel. What is the proposed sale price? This will affect our property value. I think Matt touched on that, but Matt, do you want to reiterate any of that?
Just real quick, we don't have a proposed sale price at this time. We're still relatively in the future, and the market's been very, shall we say, dynamic in the last year. But our intention is to have this be something that'll raise the property values, we hope, of the surrounding neighborhoods. And our intention is to hit a higher price point per square foot than the existing homes in the neighborhood sell for now. I know that's not exactly, an exact dollar amount, but I hope that answer helps.
All right, thanks, Matt. Next question is from Kathy. I have a retaining wall in my backyard that has been built. I am very concerned about landscaping, trees. What kind of root system are these trees? I'm very concerned that the root system will push out my retaining wall. If this happens, I'll be very upset. Who will pay for this if there's damage done to the retaining wall from the tree root system? Will there be trees planted behind my property? And if so, how many?
That's a great question. I think James Palmer, who's our landscape architect, might be the best to speak to that, and specifically maybe what types of trees would be. And James, I think what she's referring to is in the backyards along the privacy fence on the eastern portion of the yard. I'm pretty sure that's the locations of the trees that the concern is over.
Yes, this is James, and I provided the landscape architectural design for this project. That's an excellent question. I don't know exactly where your property is or where that retaining wall is that you speak of. However, the planting that we have throughout the back of these units is rather diverse and varied. That's intentional, so there's not a monoculture. I can't speak exactly to the root system for every single tree. They all vary based on microclimate and specific soil conditions that can vary greatly across the site. So there's a wide range of growth potential. Some trees will simply be stunted and never reach maturity just based on the chemistry of the soils that happen to be there where they get planted. That said, your concern is valid, and we would look to appease that concern. If there was a way that you could identify your particular property, we would seek to make sure that the trees that we are proposing in the back are far enough away from the fence line that we think that would be a safe condition for you. We are also trying to balance the views from these units over to the existing homes, and that's why we have planting in the back, to both minimize the rear elevation height of these new structures, as well as providing some privacy and some screening effect. So we're trying to balance a multitude of issues while also avoiding the drainage swale that's in the back and still providing these new incoming residents with a pleasant backyard experience. So I hope that can help to a degree, but if you can identify your actual address, we can certainly study that a bit further.
Thank you, James. And yes, please, we welcome any input on this. And in addition to the applicant being concerned about this, the staff is happy to comment on this. If, for example, you live toward this end, toward Decatur, these trees appear like they might be a little closer than some of the ones shown at the other end. So especially if you live in this area, we can make sure that these are pulled away just a little bit as needed if they're a little too close right now for your preference. Other neighbors may want more of that landscaping, and so we're happy to individualize that as much as possible with your input and specific, feedback.
Hey, Amy, I'm also happy to speak to very briefly the liability issues that Kathy asked. I am not an attorney, so I'm not going to speak to it a ton, but I have come across this issue in my real estate career more commonly with sewer lines than with retaining walls. The precedent, both nationwide in courts and in the state of Colorado, is pretty clear that if you have a neighbor, any neighbor, not just a new neighbor, where you know and you can prove that their tree has harmed something on your property, such as a sewer line, then that neighbor could potentially be liable. You, of course, have to give notice to them about the tree and show that there was damage to your property. But that's something I would definitely recommend speaking with an attorney about, as opposed to a neighbor or a developer. But there is precedent that if a neighbor's trees are proven to harm something in your yard, that they could potentially be liable. Yes.
All right. Thanks, everybody, for all the answers there. The next question is from JP. How much land will be public dedication?
So we had that earlier in the presentation. I'll just go ahead and go to that slide now. We do have a private open space, which you've seen on the site plan, which is 9,758 square feet. That is not the same as public land dedication, which is going to be accepted as cash in lieu. So we are not asking for any land because, and I'll let John Van back me up on this since he's with Parks, Recreation, and Libraries, and they are the department that specifically looks at this. But since it is such a small piece of land and the dedication, the land is 1.67 acres and the dedication would be 0.36 acres. That's relatively big in relation to the size of the overall property. Therefore, that's generally why we would accept the cash in lieu in this case. John, would you like to speak further to that, John Van?
I don't know how much further I can go. You did a nice job of explaining it. I'm John Van. I'm a senior landscape architect with Parks, Recreation, and Library. As Amy stated, our calculations per our municipal code, section 11-6-8, sees us require what would be 0.36 acres of PLD acreage. So we would be taking a cash in lieu instead of that property. We've determined that taking something here would not be beneficial to the subdivision. One of the things we've also looked at is that just the size of a park like that is not conducive for a major public use. Also, that the developer has offered to put in a private park, which is about the same size. So that's a nice thing for not only his residents, but for that entrance. Also, the grading of this is not really conducive to, again, a real active use. And they were showing, I think, a shelter and a small path, which is more appropriate for this. The other thing I'd like to point out, and you can see on this drawing here, is there's a 9-acre park 750 feet away from this subdivision. And that is a beautiful park, very well maintained by Highland Hills Park District, and offers ball fields, basketball courts, a playground, open field, and a shelter. I mean, that's larger than many parks throughout Westminster and the remaining part of Westminster. So we're quite happy that this park is here and provides great services for its residents. Hopefully that helps that answer.
Yes, thank you, John.
All right. Next question is from Amanda Messick. And she asks, is there a dimension drawing showing what the distance is from the existing neighborhood fence and the new houses being built? So what is the structure's setback from the east property line, I think?
I can speak to that, Amy.
Yes, go ahead.
Yes, there is. And I think what Amy had said earlier, that we'll provide a dimensional drawing that shows the swale, would include that. But right now it's, David, maybe you speak to this, but it's 25 to 30 feet. Is that right, David?
Is there more than one David with us?
Yeah, I apologize. David Poppleton is our lead architect on the project. And I know he and I had a bunch of conversations about this issue. So I think I'm quoting correctly at 25 to 30, but David Poppleton might have the more accurate answer.
Yeah, Matt, I think it's no less than 25 feet. You can see on the site plan, the buildings are shifted to provide some massing relief on both the front and the rear. But I believe per code, it can't be closer than 25 feet.
Yes, that is correct. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Next is from Kathy again, and she asks, is HOA was commented on. What is involved in your HOA that we should be concerned about? And the next question from JP kind of ties into that is, will this be an HOA, or I guess will the neighborhood have an individual HOA?
Matt Collins?
Yeah. Yeah, we're definitely going to create a new HOA that will be, enforce these homes. It's a pretty small pocket of homes that it's going to be 12 homeowners. So primarily the HOA will be maintaining of the private park, maintaining of the landscaped area and detention pond at the bottom. Amy had mentioned at some point that the side fences in the backyards are going to be like picket, not privacy fences. But I lost my word. What are those called again? The
post and rail.
That way, yeah, sorry. But that like see through them from the bottom of the hill, from the top of the hill, and the HOA can make sure that nobody's putting anything in there that's going to cause any drainage issues that would affect the larger neighborhood. And that'll pretty much be it. Just making sure that everybody's home's maintained nice, nothing creates any aesthetic problems, and that those landscaped areas are properly maintained.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Next is from Meredith Brower. The grass and terrain on that lot currently provides some protection for the houses along the fence when we have heavy rains or large snowmelt. How would you protect the homes, lots, and basements on the other side of this fence? I think this goes back to the drainage swale comments, I believe. Anything to add to that?
Nathan, perhaps? Or would you rather Cameron speak to that again?
No, I think you hit it on the head. It's going to be primarily that drainage swale that's in the backyard to make sure there's no water encroaching onto the neighbor's pond.
Great, thanks.
This is Nathan Ank, engineer, City of Westminster. Excuse me. That's something that I definitely put a close eye on when I'm reviewing plans to make sure that any historic flows coming onto the property are absorbed within the property and nothing from the development is getting onto adjacent properties. That's a major concern with all of these infill developments, and that's something that our stormwater team watches very, very closely.
I'll just throw in there too. I think in line with that, Nathan, I think it was you that was the advocate for the split rail fences to make sure that everybody can keep eyes on that swale and make sure, even 20 years from now, nobody's changing that grading in the backyard.
All right, thanks everybody. The next question is from Jana and Stephen Kretzel. Are there any plans to put a stop sign in at the Decatur and 105th?
Keith Klein?
So thank you for the question. We would have to study the intersection for the volumes. So the city cannot just simply put in all-way stops at any intersection that we choose. We actually have to meet warrants. And so we could do a study there. This project, again, will not be, doesn't touch that intersection, so it wouldn't be part of this. But we can do an all-stop warrant to see if you can actually add a stop sign to Decatur at that location. So the reason why you need the warrants and to need to meet the warrants is that it actually, the manual on uniform traffic control devices specifically says you cannot place stop signs just for traffic calming or to stop them from perception of speeding. It needs to meet the warrant because it gives people a false sense of security if nobody is using 105th enough and most traffic is on Decatur, then traffic starts to disobey that stop sign. But when I do the speed study, I will also include a warrant for the always stop, and we can see if it meets that.
Thank you, Heath.
All right, the next question is from JP. Will it be a special tax district? It's probably a reference to metropolitan district.
Which
sounds like a question for Matt.
Matt, yeah, please verify.
Nope. Again, every cost that gets added here is going to be taken care of by the new private HOA that will just be these new homeowners. No special taxing, no additional fees on the adjacent HOAs.
Thank you.
All right, the next question is from Meredith Brower. Are there options to add speed bumps around Elliott, Decatur, and 105th? Many people in that neighborhood walk their dogs and bring kids to the park, and many times the pedestrian first signs are ignored, adding to additional safety concern.
Another great question for Heath, please. Hopefully he didn't step away.
I'm sorry, Amy, was that for me?
Yes, thank you, Heath.
Yes.
Could we repeat the question? I apologize.
Yeah, absolutely. No problem. Are there options to add speed bumps around Elliott, Decatur, and 105th? Many people in the neighborhood walk their dogs and bring kids to the park, and many times the pedestrian first signs are ignored, adding to an additional safety concern.
Yes, so right now the city does not install speed bumps. We quit that policy since 2004 due to a lot of reaction actually to residents that live near the speed humps and those residents that have chronic pain, because the speed humps have a tendency to, it slows traffic down at that point, but then you end up hearing everybody gun it afterwards to make up the perceived loss of time. Then there's been several complaints of like the landscaping trucks or work trucks and delivery trucks going over those and the sound all night. So we don't do that, but I can look to see what kind of safety improvements we can to make the pedestrian crossings more visible and look to see what we can do. Thank you.
Thank you, Heath. And I think the next one's going to be for you too, if you want to stay with us.
Yeah, thanks. The next one's from Jana and Stephen Kretzel. Traffic will come down from 104th on Bryant. It happens already and will increase. Not all of these residents will go to Elliott. There will be more traffic on 105th.
Okay, I understand. We're not saying that there will not be additional traffic in your neighborhood due to this residential development, but the Institute for Traffic Engineering, it's the ITE, does a trip generation, and based on that right now, again, this development in a 24-hour period anticipates an additional 112 trips. So that's spread out over 24 hours. So yes, you may see some additional vehicles, one or two during a normal commute that might be in your neighborhood, but by no means will this development just be dumping a lot more traffic in front of your home, especially on 105th. I'm not sure exactly where all of the traffic patterns will be, but I can see where if somebody was working near 112th Avenue, they may take the Decatur to go up to Boucher Way and or Alcott, but I do not anticipate a lot of this traffic being on 105th. Thank you.
Thanks, and there may be another one for you, another couple for you.
Okay, so from Meredith Brower, asked for the comment around the development traffic heading out to 104th. I'm not sure that's something that is accurate. To wait at the lights on 104th and Federal is a lot when you could drive down Decatur to Boucher and get on Federal.
Agreed. But if you work or are going south to the grocery stores that are south of 104th, it is believed that there would be more traffic that would go that way. It would not make sense to go up to Boucher Way to go south on Federal Boulevard. Yes, there is some waiting at the signal, but you have to wait to go south at Boucher Way as well. And I believe that is actually longer wait than what is happening at 104th. Thank you.
All right, and the next is from Kathy, and I think I can answer this one. She's questioning why a park would be so close to a very busy street on 104th. Wouldn't this be a major concern to be so close to a busy street? I would think this is a significant safety issue, especially for small children, fence or not. And I think, Kathy, a couple of things factor into the location of the park there. The city does require a decent setback or significant setback for houses and buildings away from those streets for maybe some of the same reasons that that you're concerned about the park being there. Some of that's noise, distance from the street, and safety. So really, this space right here is actually very conducive to a park for those reasons. The park is not occupied much of the time, only occasionally by folks. And there is a fence there that shields the park from noise and other issues with 104th. But really, primarily, the building setback is driving that park to be at that location. The next one is from Kurt Williams. It's a traffic concern. Future residents would have to back out onto Elliott or back into their drives from Elliott. If heading uphill south, they'll be backing across 2 lanes of traffic and potentially towards parked vehicles. Could this be included in any future traffic considerations, please?
Keith?
Yes, well, we'll look at that, but this kind of situation does happen at several other locations throughout the city. It is also the reason why the city has pushed the development and the driveways as far south as we can, so that you're not backing out or entering and getting off of the roadway as close to 104th.
Thank you.
All right, and this is from Diane Tomachek, and this is a comment more than a question. The responses that include additional policing aren't really a comfort. We already lack parking and traffic enforcement in this area. Saying that more will be done isn't reflective of the history of the area. If that's going to be the solution to the traffic issues, then there better be a significant change to the police presence. Thank you, Diane, for that comment. The next is from Kathy again. The fence that would be at the property line between us and the new housing structures, would you be using our fence, or will a new fence be installed in their backyards? I think Matt already answered this. Matt, would you like to say anything else about this, the fence question on the backyards?
Yeah, I don't mind speaking to it again. And it was actually something we toiled over and put a ton of thought into. And it just didn't make functional sense for anybody, the new homeowners or the existing, to like build new fences and then have a foot there where there's nothingness in between fences. So our intention is to use the existing fences and the existing fence line. We like that they're nice, tall, privacy fences. You know, our intention is to make sure that remains. And for some of the folks that maybe have some, let's say, deferred maintenance on their fence, as we go through the project, we're more than happy to talk with those neighbors about working with them to maybe upgrade the fence, still have it be same height and nice privacy fences. Our door is always open to conversation.
Yeah, thanks again, Matt. And for the audience, Matt has provided his contact information, and that's in the slideshow here too. Next is from Deborah Gordon. Did I understand Matt correctly that they will be putting another fence running next to the existing fences that are already back to that property? Is so high? How high will that fence be? And Deborah, I think Matt just re-answered that question too. And next is from Kathy, just questioning why a lower housing in elevation wasn't selected, such as a ranch style, so that the existing property owners don't see the new housing and feeling like we're always being viewed by the other neighbors. Matt, would you care to comment on the housing design again?
It's a tight space that we have there, and we wanted to make sure that we were very conscientious of, like David and Amy referenced, we have 25 foot as the city code for the setback that we, is like the city guideline for how far the new structure has to be from the existing back fence. We didn't want to meet the minimum city. We wanted to at its worst points, meet the minimum city, but even have a little bit further separation to be able to angle them and have better windows, to have really good setbacks from the front. Spatially, it just made more sense to have it be a two-story for a lot of reasons in the analyzation, and including part of it being some of the concerns that I think several of the neighbors had asked we address earlier, that we're making sure we're building something that's in line with contributing to the property values in the neighborhood and not lowering them. And with the site constraints, if we had these, teeny little ranch spaces, I don't know that we could have accomplished that. So it's not a simple straight line answer. There were a lot of considerations in it, but those are the primary drivers of it.
Thank you, Matt.
All right, the next question is from Amanda Messick. Is it possible to drain the stormwater into a storm drain instead of into the street?
Nathan Ink?
In these early stages, we're definitely looking at all of the options on how best to convey the water to the public storm sewer. And I think that we'll continue to refine that as we move through the review process. Currently, right now, the release rates are pretty low, but that's always something that we're looking at and making sure that we're conveying that stormwater appropriately and in a way that doesn't negatively impact any downstream properties or residences.
All right. Thanks, Nathan. The next is from Jenna and Stephen. Who will maintain that fence?
So I'm assuming you mean the fence between this property and the existing neighbors. And I believe Matt Collins spoke to that. Matt, would you like to go ahead and just clarify that particular point?
Yeah. And again, as we go into construction and start digging, we're more than happy to speak with folks about, are you perfectly happy with your existing fence, or is that something that should maybe be upgraded to? And it's a win-win if the fences look great. It's good for us with our values. It's good for you with your values. And then on the long-term maintenance of it, it'll be what the standard in Colorado is, which is that it exists in between neighbors. The hope is that neighbors are neighborly, and if you want to replace it 20 years from now, it's a conversation that you have between you and your neighbor. I'm not exactly, Amy, I don't know if one of your people or maybe Cameron from the survey knows the existing fence line. Is it on our property? Is it on the rear neighbor's property? But whoever, it literally exists on your property, you maintain authority over it. But it's pretty common in Colorado with, people just being neighborly with each other. And if you replace it, you talk to the neighbor about if they want to split it. But it's not something that we intend the HOA to usurp your control or your authority over your fence. And I'm not sure if it's on the property of this plot or if it's on the neighbor's properties right now. But I think it's probably the people's existing houses is where it exists.
Well, I would be happy to speak to that a little bit more. It's common for the fence to be located on the property line, in which case technically it belongs to both neighbors. Obviously, yes, we would hope that everyone is neighborly and has a conversation about that to be sure. The only way to be sure is to get a survey, which the city does not pay for. So if there was a dispute, that would be a civil matter and one or another person would have to get a survey done to prove that. But ideally, yes, they just work together.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Next.
Cameron, do you know if is it on the property line? Is it on the people who live there already? Is it on our property? Do you know that off the top of your head?
Yes, actually, the fence is generally along the property boundary, except for the very south end where that higher fence exists. So basically along our the private park in the first two lots, in that area, it's a few feet onto our side of the property, but otherwise from there northward, it's generally pretty much right along the common lot.
Okay, so Amy's assumption was accurate, and we have that survey on file. If anybody would like to see it, feel free to reach out.
And I would assume that if it is on the property being developed, you've already said, Matt, that you will be having conversations as needed.
More than happy to, yes.
All right. So moving on, a couple more questions from JP. First is, what is the building height? And the second is, how many acres is this project?
I can easily speak to the acreage. The overall acreage of this whole property is 1.67 acres. It's relatively small. And
I think David Poppleton would probably be the best to speak to building height from grade.
Okay, David Poppleton.
Yeah, I'm looking it up now since it's not in the graphic and I don't remember off the top of my head. But I believe it is at the highest point. So from the lowest grade at the walkout to the midpoint of the highest roof, it's 36 feet. And then it would be about 26 feet on the front side due to the 10 foot of grade change.
Thank you.
All right. Question from Meredith Brower. Are you renaming the neighborhood Valley View Estates?
That's probably on me. I think I had said the words Valley View Estates. I thought that was the existing name of that neighborhood behind us. But maybe that was what we had flagged for this 6 homes. What is the name of the neighborhood at large? Is it not Valley View Estates?
It can change. We don't always track that. I think it may be Meadowlark, but maybe that's a conversation that you can have with the neighbors as well as to, if you're wanting to stay consistent with that.
Yeah, we'd love to, in particular for that monument sign that we're putting at the entrance. Again, we're only building homes for 12 family, it's only 12 homes. So we don't want to usurp the name that everybody knows and loves for the neighborhood. We want that monument to flow seamlessly with what the neighborhood is now. So we're open to that conversation.
All right. And just for clarity now, the working title for the official development plan and the PDP. We had to have something. So as far as the development review is concerned, it's Valley View at this time. What actually gets put on a monument sign, what the neighborhood's called, what the subdivision is called, it could be something different. And sounds like that's still kind of open right now.
Right.
So the next question is from Diane Tomachek. And HOA was mentioned in the landscaping section. Will that HOA only include these 12 homes? And I think that's already been answered. Yes, that is true. The HOA would just be for these 12 units.
Right.
Next one is from Kurt Williams. What would prevent one buyer purchasing all 12 units and then leasing them out in the end?
Matt, go ahead.
Amy, I don't know if you have a thought on this from the city standpoint, but I'll say from the real estate standpoint and the real estate investment standpoint, the price. Typically, when you make something that's higher end, it's, again, legally we can't target or try to make sure it's certain types of people, but typically when you make something nicer and a little bit more high end, it tends to draw more owner occupiers and not large scale industrial investors. So hopefully that controls it on some level.
Yeah, and I'll add to Matt, for the audience, the city doesn't regulate that, how many homes a person can buy. So although it's a possibility that could happen, to Matt's point, the likelihood would be very slim, I think.
Yeah, I would just say that typically if that was the intent of anyone, that would have been a rental developer that would have come forth rather than someone planning to sell these.
All right, the next one is from Meredith Brower. There is an increasing amount of homeless frequenting the park. Do you have any plan to help prevent them from setting up camp on the lot while you're constructing? This happens when there are large storage units left over the weekends and et cetera.
Yes, the security of the site is of the utmost concern to us. We will absolutely have a security plan in place to make sure that there's no issues with people, with theft, or with people utilizing the land or equipment improperly.
Thank you, Matt.
All right. Pardon me, my scroll is working very slowly. The next is from Deborah Gordon. Just a comment like others, concerned about the excess traffic. The Hyundai dealership just opened up, adding more traffic. Now we're going to be adding 24 more cars plus visitors. Extremely concerned. Not sure if the city is also aware of the nightly speakers that the dealership blasts when people enter the dealership after hours. Basically, their alarm system telling the guy in the black jacket to get off their property. This happens at all hours of the night, very loud, waking us up from our sleep. And thanks for that information, Deborah. Yeah, I'm not sure exactly how to respond to that. I think, the city has ordinances regarding nuisances. We don't specifically have a noise ordinance, but we do have a public nuisance ordinance. And I'm not sure if what you're describing violates it or not, but if you do have that concern, we do encourage you to contact the non-emergency police number, or access Westminster is a good tool to log in complaints, and they'll get investigated by the appropriate agencies in the city. And if there is a code violation of any type, those things tend to get addressed pretty quickly, from my experience. Next question is from Kathy. As to Matt, if you're willing, as you have stated, I would love to meet with you and James Palmer at 2792 West 105th Drive, so that I can speak to you directly of my concerns. So I think that was a response of us asking for the address, so that there's the contact information you need, Matt. And of course, Kathy, you have Matt's information as well.
Yes, and we will pass that on after the meeting as well.
Yeah, I'm more than happy to. I'll find some time in the next few days to stop by so we can start those conversations. No problem.
Okay. The next question is from JP. I think this is back to the comments John Van made about the PLD. John, that's not a city park owned by the city, is also aware of the night. Oh, I'm sorry, goodness, my screen's jumping. Let me start over on that. John, that's not a city park owned by the city and is not an amenity for the residents in the area. So why cash in lieu of the PLD amount?
John Van, are you still with us?
Yes, I am. Just waiting for the camera to kick in here. So John, or JP, that is a public park, and by law, public parks are public parks. So residents of Westminster can use that because, and I'm not sure, and I'd have to look and figure out exactly what the taxation situation is with Highland Hills, because there are overlapping districts. But that is a park that Westminster residents can use. The reasons for taking cash in lieu are because there is not sufficient room on the existing development site to provide a public park for the residents of that specific subdivision. So, our requirements require 0.36 acres. That's, the size of a backyard. And the developer has already provided something like that. So instead then, we would be taking cash in lieu. The cash in lieu will then be deposited with our budget office, and then will be adequately divided up across our acquisition and development accounts to be used to provide facilities and other needs in the city.
Thank you, John.
All right, thank you. And another question from JP. What will the HOA fees be?
Matt Collins, do you have any idea?
The HOA fees are yet to be determined. It's certainly not something that's going to be intended to profit or make anybody, extra cash. It'll be controlled and owned by the 12 folks that live here. So it'll be based on what the costs of operating the HOA is, and then on some level making sure that they have cash reserves. So that determination will be made at a later date.
Great, thanks, Matt. Next question is from Daniel Pearson. Daniel, I'm going to try to answer this one myself. From the city's perspective, why would we consider such a density-packed development in a neighborhood where currently only single-family homes exist? This development seems counterintuitive to the area and not in keeping with the current neighborhood structure. And so, as we stated earlier, this particular piece of property in our comprehensive plan is designated as residential 8 dwelling units per acre, or R8. That particular land use designation was assigned to this property in our 2004 comprehensive plan. And that was a plan adopted by the city council at that time. In 2013, the comprehensive plan was updated and that land use designation was carried over. So at least since 2004, the property was intended to be developed as 8 dwelling units per acre. It's on the edge of the existing single family neighborhood, and the planning staff and along with the city council and the city leadership at that time, and to this day, it felt like that density is the appropriate density for this strip of land.
Thanks, John.
So the next question is from Kathy. Who is the builder on this? Hudson Construction? Can you give the information on this company so we can look at their website?
Yeah, more than happy to. Let me pull up their website so I can share with you their address. But it's Hudson Construction out of, I don't know if it's Hudson Builders or, let me pull it up. But it's Hudson Boulder. They've been in the area. Yep.
Yeah, this is Matt Davis.
Perfect. You guys can
Yeah, Matt Davis, Hudson Construction. Our address is 1228th Street, Boulder, Colorado. Anyone can call me with any questions at any point in time. My number is 720-520-9011. My email address is mdavis, M as in Matt, DAVIS at hudsonbuilt, HUDSONBUILT.com.
All right, thanks, Matt. The next one is from Kathy again, regarding safety. I think the city needs to look at the areas on Decatur. Sure, we are speaking of the new structure area, but you don't hear or see the speeding involved around the corner of this property being built and down the road. Families walking to the store and back into the neighborhood down Decatur on 105th Drive, but something needs to be done because time and time again, we see speeding and cars going through the pedestrian crosswalk, not looking or allowing pedestrians to cross. The crosswalk doesn't make sense where it is located now.
Heath Klein, I believe that would be part of your speed study. Is that correct?
Yes, the speed study will be looking at Decatur's speeds on Decatur, and we will evaluate the existing crossings for pedestrians and see if we can make modifications or relocate that. The city does want to improve the safety, and so I will add this to our list and we will begin evaluating it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Heath.
All right, thanks. The next is from Jana and Stephen Kretzel. These buildings will be much taller than our homes. That will affect our light and existing views. Has this been considered?
We are getting a lighting study as a part, and this is Amy Johnson, senior planner again, a photometric plan which shows us the light on the property as they will be built. Now, I don't think there's any intention for any lights to be put on that top level at the back. But if a resident were to do something like that, you could certainly call, us, and we could try to bridge the gap, have that conversation, start that conversation, coordinate as needed. Access Westminster, as John McConnell mentioned before, is another way to enter any complaints about that kind of thing.
Okay, the next question is from JP. Will there be a tap fee for each unit?
Alex Gann, would you be able to speak to that? I think Alex is still with us. We haven't heard from him yet tonight.
Hi, Alex with Public Works and Utilities. Yes, there will be taps for all the properties.
Thank you.
All right, the next question is from Jana and Stephen Kretzel. Since these homes will be at a higher elevation, what is being done to prevent light pollution into our homes at night? It will take years for the trees to grow high enough to help. Amy, I think you just addressed that in the last question.
Yes.
Did you have anything else to add?
No, well, I mean, like I said, we are looking at the photometric plan. Our requirements say that at the property line, I mean, this measures how much light goes to the property line, and our requirement is that at the property line, that measurement be 0.
All right, the next question is from Kathy and is to Matt. Would you be willing to get a survey for the property lines for fencing? Would love to see it. No need to discuss, just a note, as this has been addressed already. Would like to see the survey.
Yep, we absolutely have a survey of this plot of land already done, and we're more than happy to share that with you.
All right, thanks, Matt. Next is from Jana and Stephen Kretzel again. The city says we have a water shortage and we are being asked to conserve. Building these units will not contribute to that conservation. Has that been considered? Might be another question for Alex.
Yes, I would just briefly say that we do ensure that we have planned for any water needs through the comprehensive plan, which this does meet that designation. Alex, would you like to add to that?
You pretty well answered the question. However, I can add that the city has planned to provide water to all remaining developable land in the city, including this property.
Thank you.
All right, the next is from Kathy. I think she's confirming that Meadowlark is the correct name for the adjacent subdivision.
Thank you for that.
And Amy, if you can see the next question.
Yes.
I'm having a screen issue.
Okay, yes. The question is from JP, and he's asking what schools will children be attending if there are children who live there. And we do have that on the plans. I think I can bring it up, but Matt, if you know it already, you're welcome to answer that.
You know, I don't recall off the top of my head. I apologize.
That's all right. I think we have it here. One moment. Too many windows open that are blocking my way. There we go. Thought it was stated on the plans. Matt, do you remember that being on the plans?
I think it was. I can pull up the public records as well.
Amy, this is Cameron. It is on the PDP set. It states that the primary school is Orchard Court Primary School, elementary school is Westview Elementary, middle school is Crossroads Alternative, and high school is Vantage Point High School.
Great, thank you so much. I was struggling with my windows and I didn't want to lose the question since John was having a little issue there.
Yeah, thanks, Amy. I'm back on track now, though. So the next question is from JP. What fees will be, paid to the school district? I can answer that. So this city requires under our code 1168, dedication of property for public purposes. We do require land dedication for public school sites, but very often we work with the school district. In most cases, they don't need additional land to be dedicated in conjunction with the project. And so just like public land dedication, we have a cash in lieu provision. And so for single family attached housing, that fee would be $468 per unit. And we'll collect that fee at the time of the building permit for each one of those units. So the next question is from Kathy, and it might be just a comment, but it says, just a note for safety, the dealership has service cars being driven, so they test throughout the neighborhood. They drive fast at times and test the curving capabilities, so that it's another street concern for the city needs to be aware of, as they may directly affect this housing development on Elliott as it does on 105th Drive. So I think Heath probably wants to make a note of that. JP has a question. Will they be built with all green materials, and will they be Energy Star homes? That's a good one for Matt and the builder.
Yes.
So I'd hate to reference if it's all green material, but certainly we have a focus on utilizing green material the best we can. And we are making sure that they're pre-wired for solar panels. They're pre-wired to be able to have electric vehicles in the garages. So, of course, a lot of those things of how people choose to live will be up to the residents ultimately, but we're trying to build to, help folks be capable of those things quickly if it's something they want.
All right, thanks, Matt. The next question is from Meredith Brower. Might be a good one for Matt again. What is the estimated timeline to break ground and finish building?
Quick. Maybe that's a better question for Amy. Maybe 6 months or something. It's going to just depend how quickly we can go through the process with the city, making sure that we got everything dialed in the right way for the community and for the city's requirements.
I think that's the best answer we could give.
All right. The next question is from Kathy, and I think I can answer this one. This is a question regarding zoning. We were told in the past community meetings with the city of Westminster that property was being looked at as parking and not housing. Why was this change? And in parentheses, this was when John Elway was talking about purchasing the lot. And so, Kathy, this probably predates many of us that are many staff that are at this meeting. What I can say is that the property is zoned planned unit development. And like all development in the city of Westminster, every development must comply with the comprehensive plan. And our comprehensive plan, unlike some municipalities, is a regulatory document. And so compliance is mandatory. This property has been designated residential 8 dwelling units per acre since at least 2004. So any development proposed on that would have to comply with that. There could have been a chance in the past where the car dealership might have approached the city to change that land use designation. That would be a separate process where we would have to amend the comprehensive plan to allow a different type of use, such as a car dealership or a parking lot or some other commercial use. But as long as that property is designated residential R8, it can't be used for anything else other than residential property. Next question is from Jana and Stephen Kretzel. One of my questions was about sunlight, not the light from the homes. And I think, Amy, that was the question earlier about light, but in this case, I think they're talking about blocking of sunlight or casting shadows
right
on the house.
Possibly if they have solar panels, I would assume. So I would encourage you, I can't remember if you were the ones who shared your information. Please feel free to email me. We can look at that more closely as needed, depending upon the landscape that is shown next to your lot and so forth.
All right, and the next question is from JP, and it's back to Alex. I think it's about the tap fees. Alex, that means the city will collect 12, one for each unit. That's tap fees.
Yes, that is correct.
Okay. And then the next question again from JP, how many exceptions is the builder asking for? That's probably best answered by Amy.
None.
Yes. Or Matt, do you want to say something about that?
Yeah, none. The only everything that the city had requested of us, we moved into, from the drainage to the fencing to the traffic flow. But I don't think we're asking for any exceptions at this point.
Thanks, Matt. I think just to add a little background to that, occasionally residential developers ask for exceptions to some of our minimum design standards in our residential design standards, and those would have to be noted and agreed to by the city on your official development plan and preliminary development plan. So I think what Matt's saying is they're not requesting any exceptions from those minimum standards. Is that a correct statement from Amy and Matt?
Yes, I know that in our first review, the exceptions were not numbered at that time. Of course, we did have several comments, and like Matt said, he is intending to address all those comments so that he does not have any exceptions. And of course, in subsequent rounds of review, we will verify that.
Yeah, I think that's a more thorough answer than I gave. That's correct. We had asked for a couple and had conversations initially, but ultimately decided it was best for all to to go along with what the existing city recommendations were, and we're no longer asking for any exemptions.
All right. Well, thanks everybody. This, well, here's another question that just popped up from Jana and Stephen Kretzel. Why is the city allowing new development when the downtown hasn't been completed? We won't know the true impact of what that development to our city as a whole until that is complete. I can answer that. And Jana and Stephen kind of goes back to my statements earlier about our city's comprehensive plan. And I'll also tie it back to Alex Gann's comments about our water supply. Our Westminster is very unique in the way we do our planning, from our comprehensive plan being a regulatory document to us coupling our comprehensive plan and our land uses with our water supply, because we own our own water utility. And like many of our residents understand, we only have so much water. And so it's important that we coordinate our water supply and infrastructure with our land use planning. That said, all of our vacant properties are assigned a land use designation, again, this one being R8, and those water supplies are coordinated with those land use designations to ensure that we have water supply for all of the vacant properties out there, including our downtown. And so while our downtown is intended to be one of the most intensely developed areas in town, we have worked diligently with our water supply professionals and public works and across the city to ensure that we do have water supply for all of our projected developments. And Alex, I don't know if you want to add to that. That was a very general statement, but if I missed anything, please let me know.
No, John, you've done an excellent job describing and summarizing.
Awesome. So does anybody else have any other questions? I think I'm to the bottom of the list. Oh, it looks like Kathy has one. She just thanks us for our time and explanation and addressing the questions. You're very welcome, Kathy, on behalf of everybody here. We're glad to help. And if you have any other questions that you think of after this meeting, here's our contact information. Amy is a great resource as the project planner on the city side, reviewing this development. And of course, Matt Collins has been very open and inviting to any questions or concerns that you have for the developer.
You're always welcome to copy both of us as well.
Well, Amy, I'm going to hand it back to you.
Thank you, John, for your help with that and answering those questions. And John has said it all. So thank you all for attending, and we'll look forward to any other interactions we have in the future.